Hi, fellow classmates, instructors, and friends. This is Ginny, your humble TCM student who knows absolutely nothing about this field, but wanted to start this audio journal to record everything TCM. If you would like to join my study group as well, please come learn with me. And let's get healthier by healing our bodies from the inside out holistically together. Hey, Kuko fam, thank you so much for tuning back with me for another study session. Today, we have another mentor joining straight from Toronto. I've had the opportunity to meet her a few times already, and she's a remarkable person. She's so warm and friendly, and she just puts you right at ease. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Desiree to this episode. Hi, Desiree.
Hi, Jenny. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for including me. I'm very honored.
Thank you. Okay, so I know you have such a remarkable background story because I've been talking to you a few times and I know you're from Toronto, like living in Toronto right now, but that's really not your birthplace and not your first home. So I was wondering if you could provide our listeners a background story of yourself. And I feel like even TCM as your career right now wasn't even your first choice. So I would love to hear where you're from and why you ultimately decided TCM as your career choice.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you for asking. So you are completely right. Toronto is my home. This is where my family is, and I work predominantly in the city. However, it's not quite as remarkable a life story. I'm sure everyone has one just like it. But I'm of Asian descent, as you know. My mother is Chinese and my dad is Nepalese. So he comes from the Himalayas, and that's actually where I was born. Both my parents are teachers, so they taught at a boarding school, and that's where they met. So dad was the headmaster and mom was a teacher there. It's a bit of a strange mix, Nepalese and Chinese, but basically just Asian, I guess, right? We're just from different parts of Asia. And when I was about 6, so I was born in the Himalayas as well. And when I was 6, my parents got a great opportunity to work in Dubai. So we moved there. We're a very small family. So it's just my parents, my dad, my mom, and my little sister. And I would say that I grew up in Dubai, which was pretty exciting, different. And then when I was 16, we moved to Toronto, and this is basically where I've been. So that's basically where I'm from.
Nice. So Dubai, you see all these crazy pictures of Dubai with all these high risers and stuff. So moving to Toronto must be like such a slower pace for you.
I wouldn't say slower. I would say it was definitely a cultural shock. And we're so blessed. We live in such a culturally diverse country. You know, we're such a global kind of like hub that it wasn't so bad. I mean, my family, we've always spoken English, so that wasn't an issue. There wasn't any language barrier, but a bit of a cultural shock for sure, because Dubai is so high tech. And just the climate, I mean, everything is a polar opposite, right? Canada is so cold, Dubai is always hot. I was very blessed because when I moved here, I was only 16. And kids tend to adapt so quickly, right? I was still in high school. I got to make lots of friends and everything was an adventure. Everything was fresh. So I enjoyed it. My parents might have had a bit of a struggle. I'm sure all of our parents who came to Canada definitely faced struggles. But for me, it was just one big adventure. So yeah, I loved it.
Oh, nice. Speaking of which, like, do you actually miss Dubai? Like, because you've been there for the beginning of your childhood, right? I know you don't have family there because your parents went there for work, but do you actually miss it there? Would want to go back to like visit?
Well, I mean, there is obviously a nostalgic connection to Dubai. It'll always be my childhood home, but I've made Canada and Toronto my real home. So I would love to go visit. I always tell anyone who asks me about Dubai, I always tell them that it is definitely a place that they must visit at least once. But to live there, I mean, it's super hot, it's super expensive. Canada is just a lot more inviting, a lot more multicultural. So yeah,
Yeah, for sure. So when you went to school, you actually didn't go to school for traditional Chinese medicine. You actually went to school for something else, right?
Yes. So, again, not quite as remarkable a story, but I find a lot of healthcare providers who find their way to practices such as acupuncture often come from different walks of life, right? And then, for whatever reason, it could be better work life balance, or they have a calling, or they want to do something for the betterment of the world. We tend to find our way back to something like acupuncture. For me, my journey started off quite differently. I actually have a business background. I have a Bachelor of Business Administration, and I worked in human resources and training and development in the nuclear industry. So that is a far cry from where I am today.
Yes, so different. Nuclear to like all organic.
I know, right? I know. And it wasn't like, I mean, nuclear industry, it sounds so exciting. And it was exciting. It was really a nuclear lab, Atomic Energy of Canada Limited. They're now changed to Canadian Nuclear Labs. And they produced basically cancer research isotopes.
That is interesting. Like to go from something like that to what you're doing now. Like what inspired you or why did you actually want to make that switch to becoming an acupuncturist?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I remember when we first started chatting, we both came up with this very similar kind of point of view. It's so weird that even though we're both from Asian descent, we don't really know a lot about the culture. And this is something that I really regret growing up. I wish I had known more about my own culture, both Nepalese and Chinese. And I didn't really have that option growing up. I went straight into business. And I was really blessed right out of university. I got into atomic energy. That was my first real career. And it was such a great experience. It's a huge crown corporation at the time. I learned a lot, and there was a lot of rapid growth, career growth that happened for me in a very short amount of time. But like many others, I find that in your 20s, you're so full of energy and hope that you kind of overshoot. I see this with many of my clients as well. It's kind of funny because now I can actually give back in that way. I know where they're coming from because I remember how hard I worked and how much I pushed myself and how much stress, you dealt with and how much stress you repressed because you just had to keep going. And at the end of the day, I think I really burnt myself out halfway through. I remember it affected my sleep, it affected my digestion, it affected my marriage, my work home balance. At times, you really truly feel like you're going insane, chasing that proverbial carrot all the time. And I kind of stumbled into acupuncture in that way. Didn't know anything about it, of course. I was going for massage therapy, which is more conventional, right? I've always been an athlete. Growing up, I was very familiar with massage therapy as a form of relaxation. But there came a point where even my RMT finally threw up her hands and she was like, well, there's only so far I can take you. Every week you come back to me. Every week your body is full of knots. I can tell that you're spiraling out of control. How about you go and see an acupuncturist? And like so many others out there, I'm so ashamed to say, my first reaction was, what? I don't want to be poked by needles. That sounds really scary. And even though I'm Asian, I don't know so much about it. I was very skeptical, but it did change my life in so many ways. Enough to inspire me to change my career. So
That's
yeah.
such a big move. I feel like just by you talking about all of these points, you say it's not remarkable, but I think it's so remarkable in a way that for someone to uproot the career path that you worked so hard in straight out of school, like when you're in your 20s, you said it yourself, you're like just hustling and getting to a position where pretty high up in your company and then deciding to just drop it all and pursue this. That's a big move, no matter what you say. That's a huge move, and it's very honorable that you can actually do that because not a lot of people can. And a lot of people might still be stuck in that position where they feel like, okay, you know what? Like, I've been in this job for like 10 years already. They feel like they're stuck and there's nothing they can do. And for you to just be like, you know what? I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to continue learning and move industries completely. Wow, that's mind-boggling and that's amazing. I find that so amazing that you could do that. To your point of how not knowing the Chinese culture or even your other heritage, I feel like it's so common and it's not very talked about in a way where a lot of immigrated parents actually do come, to Canada or the States or wherever. And I don't know, for me, I find that my parents just want me to merge me into the Western culture as much as possible. And then try to get that acceptance is so hard. It can mess children up in a way. At the end of the day, we come out stronger. And like yourself, we're always learning. So we could always relearn our heritage and culture. So at least we're aware now. So that's good. But yes, to your point, wow. Like, good job on making that switch because that is hard. I can't imagine what you're thinking during that time when you were actually doing it.
I was scared. I was very, very scared. Luckily for me, when I get an idea in my mind, it kind of sticks. And then I do have quite a bit of determination and a fair share of recklessness, I think, in me, especially back then, like I think I was about your age, perhaps in my later 20s. And I was very gung-ho that I was going to do it. And at that time, it just seemed to be the right move for me. I completely understand where your parents came from. My parents are of the same mind, of course, right? You want your children to succeed, and in order to succeed, you must be seen as same and not different. I understand that, but I, at the same time, also feel very strongly that we must always stay connected to our roots in order to be able to be strong enough to go out there, right? So yeah, it was a very hard journey coming back. I felt very afraid most of the time. My parents thought I was completely nuts. but at the end of the day, I'm very lucky. I'm fortunate that they support.
Yeah, and you're so much happier. You're so happy all the time, every time I see you. How did that mold you, like after that switch? Like traditional Chinese medicine actually change your lifestyle in any way because of the philosophies and everything? Like, how did it change you?
Chinese medicine is just so profound. I mean, when I made my move, I had no idea how rich and the depth of the history of Chinese medicine as a whole. It changed me in so many ways. I mean, going back to school definitely was traumatic for anyone, I'm sure, but especially studying something like Chinese medicine, where it is a science, but I could also say just as easily that we can also view it as an art form. And many of the theories, because they are thousands of years old, like we're talking about over 2,000 years old, some of these theories, because it comes from Asia where everything is so intertwined with art. A lot of the teachings are almost metaphorical in nature. Everything sounds like poetry and there's a bit of interpretation that goes into it. Very different from Western science, which I'm more used to, which is very textbook, factually based. They're both factually based, but the interpretation and the understanding is quite different, and you have to actually change your way of thinking. So that was a bit of an adjustment for me. I feel anytime you change the way you look at the world, it changes you as well. So that changed me for sure. I grew in patience with myself and people around me a lot. And it's amazing because the community, the kind of person who gravitates towards something like Chinese medicine, they are definitely a particular type of personality. And I was so lucky to have met so many people who became mentors and inspirations to myself. So looking back the last few years, this journey, I feel it really has changed me. I hope for the better.
I remember you telling me how, like, your definition of what traditional Chinese medicine was, and you said it was like very metaphorical and it's kind of like art in a way, and that really stuck with me. It was so beautiful.
It is, right? Yes. You gotta kind of look at it and cock your head to the side, because if you take it as is, many people will misinterpret it as hocus pocus, or, like just frills and no substance. But you gotta understand that it comes from a different time. It comes from 2,000 years ago, and we're using a lot of the same language even today. A little bit is lost in translation, but the essence is still there. So you gotta kind of change your point of view. But it is truly remarkable, and surprisingly, if you stick with it long enough, you do see a lot of similarities between the Asian point of view and the Western point of view. It's kind of cool when you see those connections come through. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It's insane how when you make that connection, then you think back, holy shit, like they make that connection 2000 years ago,
They did.
which is
It's remarkable.
so
We
impressive.
should be proud that we come from such a learned and intelligent culture, right? That those connections are made. I'm going to totally nerd out here. I'm going to tell you something. So, okay. And
Yes, please do. Please. I love
but
it.
like you've got that new Marvel movie coming out. What's something about the 10 rings? Have you watched it?
Shang-Chi.
I have
Yep.
many friends who are super into it, and they want me to go watch it with them. So in preparation for it, I rewatched part of Doctor Strange. Do you remember that movie, Doctor Strange?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was so interesting.
That was a
It's
beautiful
so
movie
beautiful,
too.
right? And it's so funny whenever I see something connected to Chinese medicine. I'm like, oh my God, yes, you get it. It's getting out there. People are going to hear about this and understand a little more. And there's this one particular scene where Doctor Strange meets, the supreme spiritual leader or whatever. And she's trying to explain to him. She has a book and she flips through the book, and the first page is a picture of the chakras, so Ayurvedic medicine. The second page is a picture of the meridians, Chinese TCM meridians. So that was kind of cool. And the third page is of MRIs. And Dr. Strange is like, oh my gosh, you're just showing me rubbish, right? You can find this stuff in gift shops and it's nothing Eureka-ish about it. And then she goes to say, and it was so profound to me, she says, these are people who saw parts of a whole, but not the whole. And that kind of sounded so cool to me, because here's an MRI, a picture of an MRI. Here's a picture of the meridians. And then you have a picture of Ayurvedic chakras. And it makes sense, right? We are all parts of a much larger puzzle. We're all pieces of a much larger puzzle. And if you can intertwine them and see the commonalities, I think solve many problems much, much faster. So there's validity to every type of medicine out there. We just need to see the commonalities, right? So that was kind of cool to me. Sorry, that was my nerding out.
No, that was fantastic.
Isn't it cool? Go rewatch it. I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, yes.
It is so cool.
I must say this.
I wish there's more marriage between traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine. Really, the only reason why you would use Western medicine is because, oh shit, I actually have the symptom now. Now I gotta fix it. But for traditional Chinese medicine is for you to prevent that sickness to even happen. So if you are healthy enough, then you won't get sick. So if you won't get sick, you won't even need the Western medicines. I mean, I think it would be nice to kind of think about it in that sense, that to kind of convert your thinking from like, oh, I need to fix something, to, oh, I need to maintain something so it doesn't need to be fixed.
It's that reactive instinct versus a proactive point of view, right? And that's so funny that you say this, because I remember one of my teachers at school telling us that in ancient times, a person would go to their TCM practitioner to prevent and stay healthy. So they paid their practitioner while they were healthy. The minute they got sick, the practitioner worked for free, because our job back in the day was to keep you healthy. right? So you came in and you paid while you were healthy. The minute you got sick, we continued to treat you. We just wouldn't take payment. And if you think of it that way, that is in essence what you're saying, right? Prevention is better than reaction. And that is, yeah, that's Chinese medicine.
Interesting. Oh, that's so cool.
I
I
know,
love
right?
this nerding out
Me too.
aspect. That's amazing because I'm like that too. I was like, sometimes I see stuff on TV. I was
Right?
like,
I love it.
yeah, so exactly the same. So I appreciate that piece. So, okay, so you went into learning traditional Chinese medicine. You're specialized in acupuncture. What else did you learn?
I'm what they call a registered acupuncturist, and you're completely right. Our primary form of treatment and therapy is needle therapy. But in addition to that, our schooling is about 3 years. You can do it in 2 if you're quick, but I took the full 3 years. And in that time, we learn a vast array of supplementary modalities. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, but some of those modalities would be cupping therapy, gua sha therapy, body work such as shiatsu and tuina massage, which is rooted in Chinese medicine principles and theory, and also moxibustion, which happens to be one of my favorite modalities now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so last question. What is one of your philosophies or easy go-to quick tips that you could provide our listeners? They can enhance their own lives and health.
So, my one piece of advice for anyone out there is in this day and age, it's so important to reconnect with the earth, right? Especially because the last 2 years, we've all been so traumatized by the events of the world, predominantly the pandemic, but everything that has kind of followed through with it. And then add into that our already hectic work lives, where we're already functioning at 100 and adrenaline has almost become like an addiction to us. It's very important to unwind. So my number one advice, which is nothing new to anyone, is always find at least 5 to 10 minutes in the day for yourselves to reconnect. You can do this in different ways. You can meditate. You can do yoga, even exercise. Many people zone out when they're running. Any form of exercise at the gym will also help. My favorite go-tos from a Chinese medicine point of view would be perhaps incorporating a practice of Qigong or Tai Chi. These are both martial arts, but also Chinese medicine self-care routines. Or if you have no time at all, at the very least, you can try something that is now called tapping therapy. Tapping therapy finds points on the body, acupoints on the body, and instead of inserting a needle, all you do is take your fingers and you tap on these specific points. It has been proved to significantly reduce stress, anxiety, bring down your heart rate, and help you reconnect to yourself and to the earth. I always advise whenever you're doing any of these activities to have your feet planted on the floor. There is a theory in Qigong where if you take energy from your surroundings, from the environment, it is only right to then recycle that energy and return it back to the ground. And the way you do that is through your feet.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, how fast do you tap? Like, and where would you tap, for example? Like, if you could describe 2 places that they could tap.
One of the most famous acupoints is called yin tang. It's also the third eye in Ayurveda. It's between your eyebrows, that point in your forehead right between your eyebrows. That's where you would take maybe your middle and index finger or your ring finger, and you would gently just tap. There is no rule to the speed you would or to the pressure. You would do whatever feels comfortable to yourself, and you would do it for as long as you feel comfortable. You can do it between the eyebrows. The other really great point is the highest acupoint on the body. It's called a governing vessel 20. Now this is at the top, the apex of your skull. The easiest way to find it is if you imagine you've got a headband from the tops of your ears and you just kind of like find the top of your head. You go ahead and you tap that. That's really great. And then the third point that I would tap would be between your nipples on your chest, right? And you go ahead and you tap there, right in the sternum of your ribcage, and you will find that this really helps ground you.
Ah, okay. So would you rotate, I don't know, 3.5 minutes on between the eyebrows and 3.5 minutes on the head? Or would you do like 10 minutes of each?
Oh, good Lord, no. Who has 10 minutes for each? I would say a minute on each point, right? You do a minute on your forehead between the eyebrows, a minute on the top of your head, a minute between, where your heart is, where your soul is, between the nipples, on the rib cage. That should be good. Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever heard of tapping. So this is very interesting. And you mentioned that your parents also use this for their students, right? Because they have high anxiety and this helps calm them.
Exactly. My parents teach in the TDSB system, and they teach special ed children. And of course, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with the students. And yeah, these are amazing techniques to help them reduce their heart rates, their anxiety, their insomnia even. You can do it right before you go to bed.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you basically, when you tap, you just focus on your breathing.
Breathe deeply, close your eyes, try and stay relaxed. Definitely don't do it while you're driving. It's not a good idea. But
okay. Well, thank you. That was a really good tip. I really appreciate that one. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your story with us. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you in terms of either seeking for your services to wanting to connect with you, like, for example, your Instagram handle or the place of work?
Oh, perfect. Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Jenny. It was such an honor. For those of you who are looking to try Chinese medicine or would be looking to find a partner to help you on your Chinese medicine journey, you can find me at my website, resonanceacutcm.com. And my Instagram handle is desiree.resonanceacutcm.
Perfect. I will also link all of that information into our show notes and into my Instagram posts as well, so you can find her super easily. If you like this episode, please give it a like. If you would like to hear future episodes, please subscribe. Or if you have any questions about health, please send me an email at kuko.health@gmail.com, which is kuko.health. If you just want to say hi or drop me a DM on Instagram, come follow me at kuko.health, which is, again, kuko.health. Thank you so much for listening to me today. And please stay warm and healthy out there. And I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.